Welcome to Ghosted by the Machine, the podcast where job seekers break through the algorithm and finally get heard. No filters, no bots, just 5 minutes of truth. I'm your host, Mark Lane, and today's special guest is someone who needs very little introduction in the HR and recruiting world. He's an HR and talent tech analyst, a recruiting executive, an author, a top 10 global HR influencer, and self proclaimed world's foremost expert on workplace hugging. I guess we're going to have to find that out. Husband, father, backup point guard. So he's into sports, which I really love. And a Michigan native. He's up in Lansing. Tim
Yeah.
Sackett, welcome to Ghosted by the Machine.
Mark, thanks for having me. Like a top 10 HR influencer basically means there's 13 HR ladies that know me. That's about it. That's what it comes down to. It's not like a again, it's not like you're like, oh my gosh, it's a Kardashian. Nope. Not even.
All right. Well, before we jump in, for anyone who somehow hasn't read your blog, heard your podcast, or been mildly offended by your honesty, give us a quick version who you are and what problem in hiring you're still trying to fix.
Yeah. I run and own a staffing firm actually out of Michigan or out of Lansing, but we do stuff nationwide. It's actually a company my mother started over 45 years ago. I've been running it the last 15, owned it outright the last 8. And so the one I think problem that it's still trying to solve, and this is I think no matter what the economy is, good or bad, most companies still struggle to find really good talented people, and we'll get into that a little bit. It's still the major core foundational issue. It's not speed, it's not it's at the end of the day, they're just like, hey, we have these openings and they still can't figure out how to connect the dot between the opening and finding really good people that want to come work for them. That's still the biggest foundational issue.
Well, what's something recruiters and hiring managers complain about privately but never admit publicly?
They don't know who's good and who's bad. I mean, literally, you could flip a coin in most hires and you would end up with the same result. And here's the issue, Mark, is that the talent that they get, the people that apply, are so close together in their skill sets that it's really hard for anybody to determine is Mark better than Tim? And if you say, okay, well, he's fractionally better, but maybe I live a little bit closer, or I went to Michigan State and you went to Michigan and the hiring manager's a Michigan State guy. Like there's always those dumb things that come into play. So recruiters and hiring managers won't say that, but at the end of the day, behind the scenes, if you close the door and they knew nobody was recording, they don't know who's good and who's not when they go to hire. It's literally a coin flip. And Laszlo Block, who was the head of HR for Google, and Google spent over $1 billion trying to figure out how to hire better, said that they were 1% better than a coin flip with all that money and expertise.
Well, from your perspective, what's the biggest myth job seekers believe about how hiring decisions actually get made?
They think that there's a bunch of like AI and technology that's like, going through all the applicants and trying to tell a person like me, a recruiter or a hiring manager, hey, this person's better than this person. In reality, that might be happening to 1% of the jobs out there. The other 99%, it's a recruiter that is getting 500 applications. They're going in, taking a look at the last 25 that came in, picking out 10 or 15 of those, contacting those people and having to call 98% of the people that applied never even got a sniff, never even got looked at. And it has nothing to do with technology, everything to do with the capacity of a recruiter and lack of technology helping them.
So has AI and recruiting tech they get blamed a lot, but what's a fair criticism and what's just recruiters using technology as a scapegoat?
Again, I think the criticism that's happening right now is that AI has bias, and so you don't want that to match. In reality, they always talk about the algorithm and the black box of AI, and no one really knows what it's choosing. You know, the biggest black box in the world, Mark, is humans. When I was a recruiter and I'm going through every applicant, you have no idea. I could be having a bad day. My wife could have left me. The dog ran off, and like now you're like you have no idea what my algorithm is either. At least with the algorithm with AI, I can actually can get into the black box and understand exactly what was happening. What was this based on? What were the weightings of why somebody got ranked here versus here? There's actually is actually explainable. I can't explain the black box of a human. So the criticism um to me is really unfair around AI. Like, I think it's one of those things where, we still don't really know what we don't know on some of that. But what we do know is how humans are hired for decades, for centuries, isn't better. And so you're trying to that's what we're comparing it to. But like the problem we have, the criticism is, well, it's not perfect. Well, it's never going to be perfect. It was never perfect to begin with.
I think the stories and the people I talk to regarding their job search, a lot of them will apply for something or apply for a job.
Yeah.
Then 90 seconds later, they get a note saying, "Thank you
Yeah.
for applying, but
Yeah.
we
And
found."
that's not AI, that's just simple automation, right? That's just simple
Right, right.
automation where a company goes, "Hey, we actually have this job posted, but we're not really hiring for it right now, but we want to keep it posted because we might have to hire for it a week from now or a month from now. So we still want the application, but we're going to tell you that it's filled." And they just set up something in their system that says automatically disposition this candidate as soon as they apply. And so again, one of those misnomers of what's really happening behind the scenes. And again, I think companies should do a better job of explaining that. Put it right on your career site. Like you
Right.
can do that by job just to say, hey, we don't have the opening now, but we're always accepting resumes because actually might have this job open tomorrow or next week, you know?
Well, did you see what is going on in Canada? That they signed a law about ghosting?
Yeah,
Or
I
and that
did. Yeah, I think it's really bad legislation. It's a government getting involved into something that I think simple economics will take over with. If you're a bad employer and you treat candidates badly, the world will find this out, and the world would treat you the way you should. If you're a good employer and you treat candidates really well, the world will also find that out. To me, that's just simple economics.
so if you could force every hiring manager to understand one thing about today's talent market, what would that be?
Speed matters in terms of the best talent. So if you take a look at that top 10% of talent, if you really want somebody and you interview them and they're really good and you feel like, holy crap, this person's dynamic, you have to move very quickly because somebody else is going to figure this out too. And if they don't, you just got lucky. That's it. You weren't better. You just got lucky because there is a wide gap between, I think that those, the top 10% of talent that's out there and then the vast majority. So it's also a misnomer that when you see like a CEO or a company go, we only hire the best talent. No, they don't. They don't. They get lucky and hire some really great talented people. But again, the vast majority is sitting there in the average talent space, but it's the best of the talent that applied at the time. And so if I'm a hiring manager, I'm going to say, look, if you truly feel like you've interviewed somebody that's really good, we have to move now. We have to move right away. Speed matters in that context.
So, as a hiring manager, they're using AI to go through the resumes, and
No,
they aren't
they're
at
not.
all?
No, they're not. The hiring
Okay.
manager is not using AI. Now, the recruiting team might be using AI to help them to filter to say, "Hey, here's 10 people that we think are the best that we think," right? Because AI is helping them rank and then they're going through and looking and then going, "Okay, hey, hiring manager, here's that." But the hiring manager is not using AI.
Okay. So with everything you see across hiring, leadership, and HR, what's actually giving you hope right now?
It's actually AI screening. So again, I'm gonna go back to that example of having 100 of people apply, 500 people apply. I talked to an employer this week, white collar jobs, they're averaging 750 applications per job. So so here's the thing, if you know 95, 98, 99% of those will never get looked at by the recruiter because they don't have capacity. They're only looking at a tiny fraction, and those are the most recent ones that applied. If you use AI to screen every single candidate, what you're saying is, hey, we're going to give 100% of candidates a chance. We're going to give them an at bat. We're going to let them into the system. And again, you still have human bias that are float in and layer in and all of that, but at least you're giving everybody a chance. And what we see with companies that are using this kind of AI screening is that they're actually hiring better and the quality of hire that from a measurement standpoint from their hiring managers after they've hired is way higher. So they're saying, hey, we're actually hiring faster because all 100% and then we're hiring better. And then the other thing for me is like the inclusivity of it. So, like, right now, if I just have a recruiter that's looking at 750 people apply and they're cherry picking the name I can pronounce or the school I like or whatever, now all of a sudden AI is like, hey, I'm going to be completely 100% inclusive. We're going to look at the skills to do the job and we're going to let everybody have a fair shot. And then from there, again, we'll have hiring managers then do interviews and screens and all the other stuff. But so for me, I'm super hopeful that AI screening actually levels the playing field for so many people that even haven't gotten a sniff at these jobs.
We're hearing a lot about ageism though with
Yeah.
these ATS systems.
Yeah. Turns out employers mark, hey, old people and fat people. Nobody admits that live, right? We talk
Right,
about this like
right,
behind the scenes.
right.
But like if you were actually to filter out, if I had to have like a big filter and I would every time somebody applied, I would look and by their age and I would look by what their weight was like or looked at their attractiveness. And I made my own, kind of secret kind of like numbers. I'm gonna tell you right now, at the end of the day, we like to hire young, pretty, fit people. That's and we wanna sit there and go, "Oh, well, that's biased." Yep, it is. So when you go to interview, look as young as you can, act as young as you can, look as pretty as you can, and be as fit as you can, because everybody else has the same skills as you. And so we're hiring about other things. And again, I know that that's illegal to make an employment decision on, but you're naive if you think everybody isn't doing that out there, even at the best, biggest brands that are out there. Because again, I had a really good AI professor that I was on a panel with that said, "Yeah, Tim, here's the issue. Every time you add AI into a process, you actually reduce bias. Every time you add human into a process, you increase bias." And he goes, and I can actually measure that quantitatively. And so if you think that humans aren't making really biased decisions, that are worse than AI, then you just don't understand science.
I guess what the tough thing is that it's happened so quickly
Yeah.
and nobody everybody
Well,
know the
by the
secrets.
way, I disagree with that. It hasn't happened so quickly. We always
Well,
hated hiring old people and fat people and ugly people. We've always hated that.
I guess what I'm saying is the AI. AI to
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah, yeah,
claims
yeah.
it, but it's kind of been dropped into the process.
Well, like you asked the question, it's an excuse that recruiting and companies have used to say, "Oh, it's not us, right? It's the
Right.
AI." In reality, it's always been us. It's always been us.
Yeah. Can you give recommendations how people should start putting their resume together or getting through this process a little bit better? Do you have
Yeah.
any thoughts and ideas on that?
100%. I think you take the job description of the company that has. I think you take your resume and qualifications and everything you have, you upload it into one of the AI models, and you say, "Rewrite my resume that gives an accurate description of how I fit into this job in a really kind of active, robust way. I don't want you to lie because I don't want to get up in an interview and have something I didn't have." And also, I would ask the model to ask me questions pertaining to the job description of things I might have, but I didn't think about putting into my qualifications. Because that happens a lot too, right? Because again, AI is going to start to like grade and match and rank these. And so you should use every tool possible to actually make this happen, from that standpoint.
Does it hurt the ATS process that, okay, I'm using AI to do my resume, and then you have the process looking it over? Can it filter out and say, well, they're using too much AI? Like my son is in college,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the
Right.
professors are
Not right
using
now.
that
Yeah,
right
not
now.
right now. The systems aren't that advanced. It'll get there. But again, the other side will be, okay, hey, this resume was written by AI to match this job description. Now I go back into the model and say, hey, rewrite this so that another AI tool couldn't recognize that it was written by AI. It's funny, Mark, because when my youngest son is in college too, and he was actually applying to graduate school, and he sent me he had to answer a question, right, about why he would, why would they want him kind of thing. So he's like, hey, can you read this? And immediately within 2 seconds, I said, how much of this was done by GPT? He's like, what do you mean? How do you know? And I said, because there's M dashes through the whole thing. No
Yes.
human writes with M dashes. And so I made him go back and said, hey, this is a great, though, but all this is really good. Now you just go and type this and rewrite it yourself using Grammarly or whatever. Make sure that's the right punctuation. Don't be an idiot, but like, don't you just take what AI wrote and then just copy and paste, like rewrite it in that same tone and feel that you have.
Well, Tim, thanks again for joining us today and pulling back the curtain on actually what's happening in the job application process. We appreciate that, and that's exactly why we do the show, and to take what experts see on the inside and connect it with what real people are experiencing on the outside. If you're navigating the job search, feeling stuck, burned out, or confused by the hiring process, and you want to tell your story, email me or DM me. And if you want to stay plugged into the real stories, real insights, and real humans behind today's Sorry to say, broken hiring system. Make sure to follow and subscribe to all our social channels for new episodes, shorts, and conversations every week. I'm Mark Lane, and this is Ghosted by the Machine. Behind every application, there's a human. Let's make hiring human again. Tim, thanks again for your time today. I really appreciate it. Stay out of the snow up in Lansing.
Thanks for having me, Mark.